So after last week's abysmal episode of Naruto Shippuden, everybody felt that this filler was pretty much done at this point. There's no way that it could be any more exciting. Well, I can say that at least this week's episode was better than last week's. In last week's review, I was way too nice on it. I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5. I really probably should have given it a 2 or a 1. I was just sort of enamored by the entire team that they were fighting, and frankly, by the end of this week's episode, I was kind of annoyed with the Grass Ninja. I wish that the Ten Tails would just appear out of nowhere and blast all of those 3 bastards into oblivion. However, this week's episode was interesting because it focused a little bit more on Kiba and his training and how Naruto inspired him to become a better ninja. That's pretty much all the first half of the episode, which goes through a flashback within a flashback. Yeah, that actually happens. We actually get to see that Kiba was actually training at the same grounds that Naruto was at when he was using his Rasengan technique, and he was basically determined to get rid of Naruto's scent and basically claim that as his own personal training grounds. And this is also where he's trying to come up with the 3-headed dog technique, the one that makes him look like a big white Cerebus, which is pretty freaking awesome and is showcased in this week's episode. You know the minute that he's training for it that you are going to see that in this week's episode. But what is cool is that Hinata and freaking Shino get to do some pretty cool things in this week's episode, and really the best reason to even watch this week's episode of Naruto Shippuden is to tune in for the last 2 minutes of the episode. I mean, once you've crawled through dog piss, you can really only go up from there. So the last bit of this week's episode featured a nice confrontation between the Grass Ninja and between Team 8. It was pretty intense, and the animation here was definitely the best part of this week's episode, and things, frankly, got really intense, and it started out real simple with Team 8 just tricking them with these weird bug clones, and then they come back and they start attacking in full force. And I especially love the scene where Shino got real insane, and he uses his infestation bugs to actually kill that massive mole summon in a really violent fashion. Not only that, but we had Hinata, who was knocking around Kazami like it was nobody's business, and that brings us to Burami, who seemed like he was mostly the muscle of the team, or really just the big chubby Peter Griffin-esque guy, but he got defeated pretty easily by Kiba and his 3-headed dog technique, which won Team 8 their scrolls, which means they're definitely going to move on, and let's face it, we all knew that was going to happen because they're all tune-ins by the second half of the series. Though it is really cool about this episode, though, and the thing I'm most excited about is the preview of the next episode. I'm really interested to learn a little bit more about the Hidden Rain Ninja, the one who's actually going to eventually become the body of the Paths of Pain. And you can even see that Konan is in the preview. There's going to be some Akatsuki stuff going on, so I'm really excited for that. But what's the deal with this week's episode? What's the rundown on this week's episode of Naruto Shippuden? It was a pretty decent episode, nothing too crazy. I think my favorite thing about it, though, is that we actually got a little bit of FaceTime with some of the individual members of Team 8, in particular Kiba. He was really the star of this week's episode. I especially liked the whole running gag where every single time he's inspired, he mentions Naruto, but tries to claim it's him who's pumping himself up. But Hinata and Shino completely agree. It's pretty much all Naruto. I mean, he is the main character of the series, who has definitely influenced every other main hero character in the show, so it definitely makes sense. But I did actually like the flashback when they were training with each other. I thought that was really cool, just to get a little bit of FaceTime with them, and there was actually some decent animation during that scene, especially when you got to see the older version of Kiba, who was trying to make all of those shadow clones of himself, which definitely didn't work because he didn't have enough chakra or stamina to even maintain that, so that was kind of funny. But really the highlight of this week's episode is that big final battle against the Grass Ninja, which definitely had the best animation and made the best use of the actual cinematography of the show. There were a few shots in this episode that were kind of impressive. I especially like the shot where you got to see Shino's bugs flying through the desert, and even the one scene where Kazami was actually swinging his flag around and blowing the bubbles all over the place. And it is interesting that I think Burami's abilities, range not only from him just absolutely smelling like shit, but he also has the ability to actually nullify any smell as well in a really gross way, where he spits out these big nasty mucus bubbles which just shower all over his teammates. He's a really weird and disgusting character, but I gotta admit, in that one scene when he was just pounding on top of Kiba non-stop, I was just annoyed. That was the part of the episode where I was almost off board. I was like, how are you guys even losing to these fools? And then this all ended up being a very clever trick from them because of Shino. He actually covered their body in these like weird armored insects, which has to be one of the most disturbing things to go through. I don't know how long they've, like, been associated with Shino, but I don't know if I could ever get used to being covered in all of those nasty bugs. That is just freaking nightmarish. But they end up destroying them, ending this week's episode, and at least rectifying the one that came before it. This was a much more exciting episode. It was just a little slow-paced, especially in the first half, but the minute they got into the action scenes, everything got a little more exciting. But still, this was just kind of another average episode of Naruto Shippuden. But I did appreciate the fact that they expanded on Kiba's character a little bit, even though if they didn't really change too much about the character overall, it was still a much more entertaining episode than the last one. And I am going to give this week's episode a 3 out of 5, just a pure, simple, average episode of Naruto Shippuden that does not reinvent the wheel, but it does have some cool moments in it, and is certainly more exciting than the last episode. And I'm really interested to see what they're going to do with the next one, and how they're going to tie the Akatsuki into this arc. Everybody's been theorizing that they're going to bust in on the Chunin exams, they're going to end up fighting Fu. And speaking of Fu, where the hell is she? She's easily one of the most interesting characters of this filler arc, and they're not doing anything with her. Well, that's probably because they're going to extend this filler for quite some time. To my knowledge, this filler is going to go through March, and possibly all the way through April, and maybe even longer. I'm not 100% on any of that, but let's just strap ourselves in and get ready for some more Chunin filler. Average episode of Naruto, 3 out of 5. Check it out, hardcore Naruto fans. Whether you've been watching the anime version or reading the manga version, it's a pretty decent episode, but nothing too crazy. Thank you guys for watching my review. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And before you guys leave, please tell me what you thought about this week's episode of Naruto Shippuden in the comments section below. Did you guys have a favorite scene from this week's episode? Is there something you want to see from the Chunin exam? And what do you want to see from the rest of the Naruto Shippuden anime series? Remember, guys, if you have not subscribed to our channel, you can do that by clicking on the channel icon right up here. You can also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter, and you should also check out our brand new video podcast show, The Powerful Nerdcast. Just recently, me and Christian sat down and talked about all of the brand new spring anime that's coming out, and we want to hear from you guys. What brand new shows do you want us to discuss and review? Watch that video and let us know. Thank you guys for watching. Super Kami Guru 9000. Out.